Good afternoon to everybody joining our call. This is Fred Keller. I want to thank you for coming to participate. I also want to recognize the good work of our guests that may be joining us here shortly. Special guest, Pennsylvania Senate Majority Leader Jake Corman. Senator Corman and I have the privilege to both represent parts of Center, Juniata, and Mifflin counties. And I know how much the people of PA-12 appreciate the Senator's work for them in Harrisburg, especially as we get through this pandemic and reopen Pennsylvania. During this time, people across Pennsylvania's 12th Congressional District have stood up to support one another. We have seen local businesses establish grant programs to help other businesses keep their workers on payroll and continue operating. We have seen an outpouring of support for our local food banks. Additionally, we have seen manufacturing companies switch their production to make critical resources like hand sanitizers, PPE, to help in the fight against COVID-19. Most of all, we have seen the robust American spirit that will never be overcome by any adversity, including a global pandemic. Over the course of the past several months, Americans have banded together to help flatten the curve. Following CDC guidance and drastically changing our daily lives, we have been successful. Hospitals are now equipped to handle COVID-19, and health experts are encouraging a reopening of society. Each of the 15 counties in Pennsylvania's 12th Congressional District have moved from the governor's red phase to the yellow phase, and many are ready to safely move to green and give their residents the option of reopening their businesses and livelihoods. On today's call, the Senator and I will outline the steps we are taking at the federal and state levels to aid local communities as we all seek to safely and quickly defeat this virus and reopen Pennsylvania. Before we get started on that, let's have a little bit of an update on what Congress is doing to address COVID-19. Working with President Trump and his administration, Congress passed, and with my support, 4 bipartisan legislative packages addressing the public health and economic impacts of COVID-19. These packages totaled approximately $3 trillion and increased access to testing and personal protective equipment, provided economic relief for small businesses and families, dispersed funds to state and local governments, and strengthened protections to keep Americans safe. As part of the CARES Act, Pennsylvania received nearly $5 billion to support our hospitals, educational institutions, farmers, businesses, nursing homes, police and fire departments, and other sectors impacted by COVID-19. While all of these federal funds have not yet been driven out to their final destination, we are working closely with elected officials at the state level to ensure Pennsylvania receives the support we need. My focus has been on ensuring that any legislation Congress passes is targeted to address the impacts of COVID-19. While the first 4 legislative packages that Congress passed dealt specifically with COVID-19, I was disappointed to see Speaker Pelosi push through a bill this past Friday that spends nearly $3 trillion more on items unrelated to the pandemic. That bill included many provisions that have nothing to do with COVID-19, and it was written without bipartisan support, unlike the rest of the first 4 bills Congress passed. One glaring example of why this bill was totally unacceptable is the fact that while millions of Americans remain unemployed due to COVID-19, the Speaker's legislation gives taxpayer dollars to illegal aliens. Additionally, that bill used the term cannabis more than it used jobs or economy. I believe this is the wrong approach to move our nation forward. Rather than considering a partisan messaging bill that has no chance of becoming law, we should be focused on helping our local communities safely reopen their economies. The best form of economic stimulus is a job. I understand that many of you want nothing more than to return to work, regain your livelihoods, and find some sense of normalcy. Pennsylvania's prolonged shutdown has had a devastating impact on small businesses and their workers across Pennsylvania. On top of that, working together, Pennsylvanians have flattened the curve. The original justification for closing things down was to give our hospitals time to meet capacity and further prepare to treat COVID-19 patients. They have done that, and many hospitals across Pennsylvania are reopening for non-emergency care. Dr. Donald Yealy, UPMC's Department of Emergency Medicine Chair, recently said, and this is his quote, "We can safely reopen not only our hospital care, but the region and society in all areas that UPMC serves by protecting the most vulnerable, particularly the elderly, and doing things safely and smartly." Dr. Yealy is spot on. I firmly believe the best thing we can do to recover from this invisible enemy is not cower in fear, but come together as a nation and find ways to return safely to work and restart the greatest economic engine the world has ever known. No one is calling for an immediate return to the way things were in January. But after months of following social distancing guidelines and hygiene standards, the American people are capable of continuing to do so while safely getting back to work. It is a slap in the face of small business owners, workers, and Pennsylvanians as a whole that mega retailers are allowed to operate, but small businesses must remain closed. It is time that we allow our local communities to get back to work so we can provide for our families. Please know that I am committed to finding ways to return power to individuals and restart our economy. The private sector can do great things when government provides appropriate guidance and gets out of the way. Looking ahead, I know conversations continue in the media and at the Capitol about another COVID-19 response bill. Taking a look back, Congress already spent $3 trillion in taxpayer money responding to this pandemic. From these various relief efforts alone, Pennsylvania's government, small businesses, educational institutions, and families have received tens of billions of dollars in relief funding. While necessary, that money, which again has not all yet been driven out, has grown our national debt and increased our deficit. Rather than spending more money on partisan projects, we need to ensure that Americans are getting back to work and the full effects of current relief measures are fully realized before we pass another bill that would saddle our children and grandchildren with more debt. With that, before we open it up to questions, I'd like to turn the meeting over to Senator Corman for introductory remarks, anything he would like to make. But just a little bit of an introduction for the senator. An outstanding public servant, Senator Corman was elected to the Pennsylvania Senate in 1998 and represents the 34th District, which includes all of Center, Mifflin, and Juniata counties, and part of Huntington County. Our region is fortunate to have Senator Corman serving as the Senate Majority Leader, the second highest ranking position in Senate leadership. In this position, Senator Corman has been a strong advocate for issues that benefit the Commonwealth, including reforming our state's pension system, investing in Pennsylvania's infrastructure, and strengthening our economy. Senator Corman, I would like to thank you for joining our call today, and the floor is yours for anything you would like to add.
Well, thank you, Congressman. Very kind of you to invite me to be part of your call. And I also want to thank you and your colleagues for the work that you have done so far in Washington, D.C. to help us at the state level. And also, I'm glad to see someone's down there mindful of the national debt that's being created through this crisis. And, you know, and that printing machine that's printing money can only go so long. And so we thank you for bringing a little halt to what the Speaker of the House is trying to do. And hopefully a reasonable package can be negotiated that can help states and and other entities that have been so affected by this crisis. As far as the Commonwealth, we are in an autocracy in a way. Governor Wolf declared state of emergency about 80 days ago, and he's been running the state unilaterally for the most part. The legislature has done its best to try to keep him in check and to try to assist our individuals and our constituents. I probably have had at no time in my career more phone calls to my office looking for clarity. Obviously the biggest issue is the unemployment compensation with the backup at labor and industry, the Pennsylvania labor and industry, and the frustration with people and what they qualify, what they don't. Clearly, one of the sort of ways to comfort people from staying home was expanding unemployment compensation, which you did down in Washington, D.C., and we did as well. But unfortunately, that's been a backup with the many requests, now close to 2 million, that we received. We've been working with the administration to try to assist them to deal with this issue. Our present day, where, as you probably know, the governor's created this red, yellow, green format during this declaration of emergency, and red meaning you're still the stay-at-home order, yellow meaning some of that is alleviated, and green meaning you're essentially back to normal. That's led to a lot of controversy as well. I know I represent Huntington County, and they're still in the red, and that's very frustrating, and it was a long time for Mifflin and Juniata to get to the yellow. We thought we had a better idea by letting the counties decide best how to move forward. Unfortunately, this week the governor vetoed that bill. So we are continuing to push the governor in any ways we possibly can. But he's using his Act 35 powers, which is the emergency powers, very broadly, which was never anticipated. When you think of emergencies, you think of floods. You think of maybe a hurricane, something of that nature, which is temporary for a very short period of time, where you control the traffic in that emergency area. This governor using it statewide and controlling traffic statewide is unprecedented, particularly for this period of time. And he's indicated that he's going to extend that 90-day. The emergency would last 90 days, which brings him like June 4th, and he's already indicated he's going to extend it even longer. I guess our biggest concern, as we see other communities, other states around us, the governor the other day, when he had a rant about threatening communities who wanted to come out of the red sooner, he called this a war. And I said, okay, well, if it's a war, let us help. We want to be part of the effort. And part of the effort is what's going on the other side, not just the virus, which is obviously very important, but also the damage that's being created by these stay-home orders for 80 days now. And so, and they're not just economical either, they're social and many other impacts of state government. And, Americans, Pennsylvanians, we want to be part of the can-do, not the we can't. We want to be part of the can-do community. And, let us loose, let us figure out ways to get our kids back in school in the fall. Let us figure out ways to get our kids back on campus in the fall. Let us figure out ways to get, our non-contact athletics out there so kids can be outside and getting exercise again. Let us figure these things out. Instead, the governor has unilaterally kept all the power in Harrisburg, and that's been unfortunate. So we will continue to push the best we possibly can, and take it from there. But that's where we are at the moment. It's starting to lighten up a little bit, but we have major challenges with the impacts. One of those impacts we saw in the paper here locally, Senator L.A. Times and State College. The hospital just just released 50 people. They're not short-term furloughs, and that's because of the economic fall off of not being able to do elective surgery. So, that's just one of the many consequences that we're seeing from this pandemic. So we will continue to work with the governor best we can to try to alleviate his concerns so that we can get our communities back to more normalcy. But again, let me thank you, Congressman, for your help, everything that you've done in Washington, what you have done and what you're trying to stop from being done. Both of those are very, very important.
Thank you, Senator Corman. It's really been a pleasure to get to know you over my time in Harrisburg and work with you on issues, from the federal to state to the local level. You've been a true leader, and I really appreciate your help and support. Before we get to the questions, if you should need anything, please feel free to reach out to any one of our offices. You can find contact information for my office at keller.house.gov/contact. And Senator Corman, if you don't mind, I'll just direct them to your website, senatorcorman.com. We are here. We represent you. We're here to work for you and serve you. We're going to open the call up to questions. If you would like to ask a question, please press *3 to enter the question queue.
Thank you very much, Congressman Keller. Again, my name is Dirk, and I'll be moderating this call for you all today. And not only are there folks on the call that if they have a question and would like to ask it live on the call, they can press *3, but we also have people listening online, and they're submitting questions. And we're going to start with a question that was submitted. We've got a question from Tom in Brackney, and he's asking, will there be a review and or investigation of Governor Wolf and Health Director Levine's handling of seniors who have tested positive for COVID-19 in nursing homes?
Well, Tom, I want to thank you for your question. There's a couple things that have already been being done, I'll say, from the federal side, and one of those is Congressman Scott Perry has asked the U.S. Health and Human Services to investigate the PA Department of Health's management of nursing homes during COVID-19. The request is for an independent investigation into whether the Pennsylvania Department of Health's guidance for nursing homes during COVID-19 has contributed to any kind of increase in COVID-19 infections and impacts on those infections. The guidance also states that nursing homes must continue to accept new admissions, receive readmissions for current residents who have been discharged from the hospital, including patients who have had the COVID-19 virus. As we do know that almost 70% of the COVID deaths in PA occurred in long-term care homes. So again, we know that the Secretary removed her own mother from a nursing home when the pandemic started. So we think that the Pennsylvanians deserve to know exactly what role the government played in the spread of COVID-19 infections. And, we're optimistic that the HHS will get to the bottom of this. And, Senator, I don't know of what you know might be happening from the General Assemblies or anything. I know there have been some people that I've heard some talk about some things, but if you have anything to add from the state level.
Yeah, well, sure. We already started hearings in the Senate, and we had a hearing about specifically nursing homes and the problem that we're having in nursing homes. In Pennsylvania, more people have died from COVID-19 over the age of 85 than are under the age of 80. And if you actually saw UPMC, who testified, they own several nursing homes, and they didn't have one death in their nursing home because they did what the experts said, go and protect those who are the most vulnerable. Where the Commonwealth and the Wolf administration focused on shutting down the entire state as opposed to focusing on those who are the most vulnerable. So we will clearly, as this goes on, continue to hold hearings as our oversight role dictates to review this entire handling of this emergency, but specifically the area of nursing homes because that's where the most deaths have occurred.
Thank you very much, Senator. Gordon from Montersville asks, does Congress plan to address the shortfalls in the PPP program? While they're happy to be able to utilize the funds to keep their family business of over 56 years going during this pandemic, some of the terms are not realistic.
Gordon, thank you for that. I guess I'd like to say the PPP program, as we all know when we started out with the pandemic, we were looking at a short-term flatten the curve, and that has extended longer depending on what part of the nation you're in. Some states have already opened earlier and done things differently. So I'm very, very supportive of ensuring that we grant needed flexibility to the PPP that truly works to benefit the businesses as Congress intended. We've been advocating with the Treasury Department that it make changes and have flexibility. One size does not fit all, and we've spoken to many business owners in the district, and restaurants, hotels, manufacturers about how it affects their businesses. And we do have a bill before the House that would be allowing for forgiveness beyond the 8-week covered period, changing or eliminating the 25% restriction between payroll and other expenses. So some of the provisions that we have heard would be helpful. There's a bill, and it's my understanding that it will be brought up for a vote next week. So we're very, very optimistic that we'll be able to get some of these changes so that it would benefit businesses of different, depending upon, because one size doesn't fit all. So we're very optimistic that we'll be able to get those things done. But keeping in mind, when we put that out, the time frame has definitely changed from what the goal was initially, and we need to make sure that the program reflects that change.
All right, now moving on to a caller question. We've got Larry on the line. Go ahead, Larry. You're live with Congressman Keller.
Yes, Congressman. My wife passed away in 2019, and just recently I received a stimulus check in both our names for $2,400. I've called your office twice. I called the bank. They won't cash it. They won't deposit it. It's kind of frustrating in this situation because I could certainly use the money, but I don't want the extra $1,200, So what is the situation here?
Well, thank you for the call, Larry. And sort of what happened here, and it's unfortunate that this is happening and bringing up the fact I'm sorry you lost your wife last year, and it certainly doesn't help, having this problem. But the IRS was trying to make sure people got their payments rather rapidly, so they were trying to use some of the information from last year when people may have filled out income tax returns. The reason we can't give you an answer when the bank won't cash the check, if the bank would cash the check, then we would be able to give you guidance on how you return that other portion of it and keep the $1,200 for you. But unfortunately, since the IRS is still coming up with the guidance on how we handle that, we don't have that answer right now. But I will tell you this, if you've contacted our office and given your contact information, we'll make sure that as soon as we get that guidance, that we contact you and provide you with the guidance on how to handle that check. Again, my apologies for the way it's happened, and I'm sorry that the IRS made these kind of errors. But again, they, in their defense, they were trying to make sure people got money as quickly as they could to help out. Unfortunately, it didn't work out so well for some people. But again, I appreciate you calling, and we have your contact information. If you want to really doubly make sure we have it, you can contact our office again. Let them know that you spoke on the call, and we'll make sure we have all that information so that we can contact you back when we have the guidance from the IRS. Because I can't tell you how to do that until the IRS gives us the information so that we handle it properly.
Thank you, Congressman. Next on the line, we've got James from Williamsport. Go ahead, James. You're live on the call.
Yeah, Congressman, I was wondering why when you passed the bill you didn't give money first to state and local governments as opposed to big business.
Well, if you look at the entire CARES Act, okay, there was $150 billion that went to state and local governments. In fact, Pennsylvania, between the Commonwealth and some counties in Pennsylvania, there was about $4.9 billion. There was also money in that bill that went to hospitals. There's money in that for education. There's money for that for individuals, of course, the $1,200 payments. There's also, when you're talking about the big business, if you're talking about the paycheck protection, the guidelines that were set up for that were for employers of fewer than 500 employees, and it was set up so that people could apply for the paycheck protection. So there's a variety of support, and I know there's a couple points where there might have been one or two companies that people say shouldn't have gotten it under the guidance or whatever. but I'm not going to let one or two glitches in the whole system undo all the great work. I mean, we had a fellow right here in Lycoming County, a one person, who applied for the Paycheck Protection on a Friday and by Tuesday had his money doing what it was intended to do. So some of that other guidance has been adjusted. And again, we did provide for a variety of help, whether it's for the state, the local, or individuals and or small businesses. So that's really the comprehensiveness of the package. And Senator, I think you know that the Pennsylvania, I believe, already got their part of that $5 billion.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, next week is the week we're going to try to appropriate those dollars. But yeah, they sent us a bunch of money for some of the larger counties already, which they've already gotten those. They sent some money for schools, about $100 million. And then we have about another $4 billion to appropriate, which we plan on appropriating to nursing homes, hospitals, and things of that nature, COVID related. So we did get a good tranche already. Now, there's talk about another that might offset some revenue. We'll wait to see where that unfolds. But certainly, the federal government has been more than generous.
Thank you, Senator.
And I'm sure, Senator, what you guys work on you guys will do a great job of making sure that gets where it needs to go.
That would be our plan. Absolutely.
All right, gentlemen, moving forward, we've got Brian on the line with us now. Go ahead, Brian. You're live on the call. What's your question?
Yes, Senator, for you and Mr. Corman. I'm Brian Baker, the mayor of Port Royal Borough here in Juniata County, which is in Mr. Corman's area. The question I had was a few evenings ago. I'll say, first of all, that I got the utmost respect for the governor. But the question I have, a few evenings ago, the governor went on Channel 27 and other news outlets and said that the Poconos, if they go, that's Monroe County, if they go to the yellow phase, they'll be allowed to race. Juniata County will be in the yellow phase tomorrow, and we're a professional business. The racetrack here at Port Royal Speedway, it pays a tax to the borough. It pays a tax to the Juniata County School District. The economic impact, hotels, restaurants, which of course is kind of beside the point right now. I just wanted to know why, if the governor was very confident in NASCAR, why can't local dirt tracks like ourselves go back to racing with no fans? We understand that. I don't know if this has been addressed by Mr. Corman. I thought it was, but I put that out there to you guys.
Senator, if you want to take that first, and then I'll follow up.
Sure. I know you have a track there in Selinsgrove, too, which is fairly important. This has been all part of the problem with this administration and their inconsistency. It started with the waiver process, and some businesses were allowed to operate, some were not. Some are very similar missions. And this is another area. We have lobbied hard to the administration as far as allowing these type of recreation, athletic events, whether it be youth or otherwise. Again, allowing people to figure it out. Ohio, my son plays travel baseball, and Ohio is playing out there now starting June 1st. And Pennsylvania is still shut down, even in the yellow phase. They figured out ways to do it. There's sort of creative ways to be able to make sure you limit the contact. But they did it. But again, part of that can do. Why, Poconos can race and Port Royal or Selinsgrove and other smaller ones cannot, doesn't make any sense. We've continued to push the governor on this sort of thing. He's been pretty much of a deaf ear. He and I would say, I have a great deal of respect for him as well. And before this all kind of came together, we were fairly close as friends, professional friends, even though we had ideological differences. This has been a disappointment, to say the least. And we will continue to push for Port Royal because it is such an important part, of our community, an important part of our summers. And, there's no real good reason why you can't race in Port Royal if you can race in the Poconos.
Thank you, Senator. And looking at that, and I've asked the question to Governor Wolf also because Selinsgrove is in Snyder County, which is in the yellow phase, and the governor hasn't allowed them to start racing yet either. And I have a lot of friends that drive sprint carts, whether it's in Selinsgrove or Port Royal, they race at both places. And I think this just shows another example. And again, I have respect for the governor also. I've worked with him on things when I was in Harrisburg. But this is the inconsistency, and this shows where he's talking to NASCAR and the big people that maybe aren't necessarily always headquartered here in Pennsylvania, and not talking to the people in Juniata or Snyder counties on the racing of the people from Pennsylvania. Just shows that he's willing to work with those organizations from outside our state rather than working with PA residents and our General Assembly, quite frankly. So I will continue to advocate for the same kind of treatment for Port Royal, for Selinsgrove, for the people of PA 12, so that we can do what we know people want to do, and that's start to get back to some sort of normal life where we can have the same benefits, whether you're a small business on Main Street as you do the mega retailers, or whether you're Port Royal and Selinsgrove Speedways versus the NASCAR.
Our next question comes from Mary Jo in Lycoming County. Mary Jo, you're live on the call. What's your question?
I think there are many states, many counties throughout Pennsylvania that have clearly met the goal of no more than 50 cases per 100,000 population. And we've been in this, Lycoming moved to the yellow phase 2 weeks ago, and my understanding was that if you remain consistent with this, that after a 2-week period, then you would be allowed to move to the next phase, which would be the green phase. And I guess I'm very disappointed that there are no counties yet that have been moved into the green phase, and I'm very familiar with the counties across the state. And I think that there are many counties that have so few cases and no deaths, but yet are still now in the yellow phase. When is anybody going to move to the green phase?
Thank you for the question. I would just like to say that we have still not heard from the Wolf administration what going to the green phase means. I mean, he's talked about red, yellow, and green and what we need to do to get to yellow, but as of yet, I'm not aware of any guidance that he's put out that says, okay, these are the milestones that need to be met to move to green. Now, we've heard that there may be some announcement in the next couple of days of counties going to green, but having to know what the metrics for those are, I'm not aware that the governor has put those out or published them in public for any kind of review for us to look at. And Senator, maybe you might have some insight of things you've been hearing in Harrisburg to add to that.
Well, it's funny. Timing is everything. Someone just sent me a release saying that the governor, he usually likes to make these announcements. Excuse me a second. Sorry, I took you off speaker. He usually likes to make these announcements Thursday to start Friday. And apparently he put out some sort of release that maybe some counties are moving to the green phase. Again, what that just means everything's normal, or what that means, we're not sure. But he has not given any indication that anyone was moving to green as of yet. I would expect some sort of announcement out of him tomorrow. As I said, Friday usually seems to be the day that he, moves people around from one area to another. So, although there's no pattern for sure, just judging by someone who just sent a notice to me, plus tomorrow's Friday, I wouldn't be surprised if he made some sort of announcement tomorrow.
Thank you, Senator. Moving next to Jean. Jean, go ahead with your question, please.
I was wondering if there is any way, either federally or statewide, that can put a stop to Governor Wolf's emergency powers as of June 4th. I have been very frustrated by the inequity, as I'm sure most of the state has been, with what is open and what is closed and the draconian measures and the power. Is there anybody that can put an end to it somehow? That's my question.
Senator, if you
Well,
might, maybe I don't know what's happened, and you could sort of
Sure.
see what the state's doing.
I'd be happy to address it. As I like to tell people, my brain is not burdened with a law degree. And every time I talk to the attorneys, I get less clear on an issue. In the Act 35 emergency provision, which the governor is operating on, it does allow provision for the legislature to vote through a concurrent resolution to end the emergency. But there's also another part of the Constitution where it says concurrent resolutions are to be presented to the governor and then signed by the governor. And clearly he wouldn't sign that. So we've had attorneys looking at it, whether the legislature has this power to end the state of emergency. And matter of fact, I think today in the House, one of the committees voted out concurrent resolution that would end the emergency. My guess is if we would move forward on that over the next couple of weeks, we might be in for a legal battle before it's all said and done, and then you never know where it will end up. But there's conflicting legal opinions on it, like everything else. We're trying to work with the governor, but as I said, if he makes a decision to extend this state of emergency past the June 4th end of the first 90 days, then I think the amount of frustration is going to mount to the point where the legislature may take this on.
I would just add that, I am confident, and particularly with Senator Corman's leadership, that the General Assembly will find the best way to handle this with the governor. And again, I'm not going to do what the governor does, trying to tell the counties and the state reps and senators how their portions of the state should be managed. I'm gonna let that up to the very, very capable leadership of Senator Corman, and I have all the confidence in the world that they'll get to the right resolution.
One of the factors in that, Congressman, of course, is now the money that you've already sent to the state is already here, but future appropriations that you send out to the states under this COVID-19 emergency, do you have to have a declaration of emergency to receive it? And that's something you guys would have to, and that would impact on our decision. It would also impact on how you would deliver the money.
Yeah, we'd have to look at what's in the legislation to make sure the rules for dispersing that would not tie that up. Yeah.
Thank you, gentlemen. Cindy from Mifflinburg is really concerned about the voting process this year and asks, how is the government going to verify that the vote is accurate and honest?
I guess I would just thank Cindy for her comment and question. The CARES Act actually included $400 million in funding to states to prevent any kind of issues that may come up and prepare for the coronavirus in the 2020 election cycle. Pennsylvania actually received around, I'll say, plus or minus $14 million from the government for this purpose. I will say that our county elections offices do a good job of running the elections, and the state, of course, passed some legislation last year, and really the states take care of the elections, the county elections offices. But there has been resources put to that, and I'm confident that through the oversight of the General Assembly and the county election offices, I think that they'll be able to make sure that our votes are secure. And I don't know, Senator, I don't know if you have any more insight on that or not.
Sure. The big change, obviously, is the mail-in ballot. Now, we've allowed absentee ballots for decades. And the catch the absentee ballots was you had to provide an excuse. Well, we decided last year to remove that excuse because no one checked it anyway. So it wasn't like, there was a police force out looking to see if you were truly out of the community or you were truly at work or whatever. You had to provide an excuse, but you never really no one ever checked. And so we just decided to remove that. And so now you don't need an excuse. You could vote in by mail if you want. Clearly this year, because of the COVID-19 and the social distancing, we were anticipating a lot more by mail than we ever had before, which will cause issues with the counties. We could, if we have competitive races, we could very much be like Iowa and waiting a long time for the final results just because the county's capacity to count the votes. So fortunately, we're in a primary. Fortunately, we don't have a presidential competition in that level. So we are, in this budgetary process, going to order a review of this primary, how it went for the counties, what things we can do, what verifications we have that people's votes were counted the way they wanted them to be counted. This is sort of a new territory. We're going to have a lot more by mail than we've ever had before, and I think it'll be very important for us to review and make whatever changes we need to prior to the November election.
Thank you, Senator Corman. Next, we got a question on the line from Robert. Go ahead, Robert. You're live on the call. What's your question?
My question is, are we going to hold China accountable? They've basically committed World War III and never had to leave their shores. They have economically benefited from this, from Italy, Spain, and numerous countries in Europe, not to mention the United States. And I want to know what we're going to do to change that.
Thank you for the question, and that's really a question a lot of people have, how that looks and what it looks like. I think it starts right now, and it starts with some of what the president's already been doing by calling the Chinese government out for what it did, the Communist Party of China, for what they did in not being truthful, also for the World Health Organization being part of that. So we're already looking. I know the president's already looking at measures, whether it's terrorists, whether it's other things. But one thing we need to do too is bring our supply chains back to the United States. So yes, there will be that accountability. But again, we shouldn't go and say we're going to do this, this, and this. We need a starting point. The administration is working on that as far as what that means to hold China accountable, whether, like I said, whether it's tariffs or some other measures. And in addition to that, as we get farther into the investigation to see exactly what happened, what they knew, when they knew it, and why they didn't tell us, it might take on a different approach and involve more things of accountability than just some things right now economically. So looking at that, yes, China will be held accountable. There are committees that are looking into the Intel Committee in Congress will be looking into that, as will many other committees that have oversight and reform. Our committee will likely be looking into some things. So I see us starting out by saying initially this is what accountability looks like, but it could get much more strict as we find out what they knew and when they knew it.
Thank you, Congressman. We've got Janet on the line next. Janet, go ahead with your question, please. Janet, are you there? Is your phone muted? Perhaps it's Janet's phone, but we're talking to Steve. Steve, are you on this line?
Yes, I am.
Okay, sir, I'm so sorry. A bit confusing, but we're connected. What is your question, Steve?
I would like to know when Harrisburg's going to open up PennDOT. I am a used car dealer, and I've had titles down there from March the 17th. I have called at least 3 times. They tell me they'll call me back in an hour. They've never called me down. I can't take stuff down. I know I've been closed, but I have car or titles there since in March, and I'm opening up tomorrow, and I don't have my titles back. I have nowhere to go. I can't ask nobody questions of when PennDOT's going to open up. I mean, he's opened up used car dealers, but he's closed down PennDOT. And I'm just wondering what we're going to do. Can you answer when PennDOT will be open and what we do with titles or stuff?
Sure. This is Senator Corman. Happy to try to address it. Big part of the problem, obviously, is that Dauphin County is still in the red, where Harrisburg resides. And hopefully tomorrow when the governor makes an announcement, he'll be moving them to the yellow soon. But since they're in the red, the Rock, as they call it, or the Keystone Building, has been closed for the most part. And they've been doing as much as they can through the mail, but they're obviously not getting to anywhere near the amount that they need to, as they were in labor and industry. So this is all, part of the administration's problems is they've, a lot of these areas where they've allowed certain businesses to be open, but they haven't allowed the supply chain to be open, which doesn't make any sense, clearly. So This is just another example of that. Hopefully, the workers will be back soon and things can return to normal. But we're still at the governor's mercy on this stuff.
Thank you very much, Senator. Next on the line, we've got Carol from Lycoming County. Carol, what's your question?
I would like to know if the new Nancy Pelosi bill is giving money to Planned Parenthood. And if so, what is the Republican Party going to do to stop it?
Yeah, well, just in the whole scope of the bill that was passed on Friday that Nancy Pelosi, Speaker Pelosi, wrote in private, along with her proxy voting stuff too. But the bill, the $3 trillion bill that she passed with Democrat support in the U.S. Congress on Friday is dead on arrival. We did have a call with Leader McConnell. He said it's not going to make it out of the Senate. So what the Republicans are doing is refusing to take that $3 trillion that gives money to people in our country illegally, that mentions cannabis more times than it mentions our economy. It's not going to be coming out of the Senate. And the reason it is, and you can say, well, that's, you're relying on the Senate. Senator McConnell had a very good point when we were talking. He said because the Republicans in Congress, in the House, stay together and are united on this, it actually gives him the ability to do his job and make sure that they can't try and get anything done over in the Senate. So again, it's not what the Republicans are doing is we're fighting it, not just as the House, but as the House and the Senate to say, hey, look, we don't want this kind of legislation that doesn't benefit, us as American citizens to move forward. And all that bill does is put us really farther in debt. It doesn't address COVID-19. It does a whole bunch of other items that are unrelated.
Thank you, Congressman. Next, we're going to Margaret. Margaret, go ahead with your question. You're live on this call.
I was just curious as to any federal unemployment tax payments to self-employed workers or non-employee compensation workers.
Just a couple things in the CARES Act. The PPP was designed for people that were self-employed. They can apply for that, and there's still about $100 million left in that. So there's money left in the PPP. In addition to that, when the unemployment was done related to coronavirus, self-employed individuals that couldn't work because of the coronavirus or a shutdown in a state could also apply for unemployment compensation benefits. So I would say if you have any questions on that of whether you qualify or not, certainly contact our office, and there's somebody that'd be more willing to help get you pointed in the right direction for those things. And I think the state, I think, did some things where they're at least administering the unemployment compensation part of that, Senator.
I'm sorry, I had to take myself off mute. What did you say again, Congressman?
The question was about the self-employed individuals. Of course, we talked about PPP, right. And then also about the unemployment compensation for self-employed individuals related to a shutdown or the coronavirus. And the state is administering that as designed under the CARES Act.
Yes.
That if people apply, they can get the unemployment compensation for self-employed.
Absolutely, yes.
All right, thank you, gentlemen. We've got another caller here. We've got John on the line. John, go ahead with your question, please.
Yes. My mother-in-law is currently in a nursing home. She has not filed a tax return in several years. Her Social Security goes to the nursing home as part of the agreement, and I know that the economic impact payment, she does qualify for that. My question is there an easier way to find out if and when she would be receiving that payment. We've tried the website, the IRS website's kind of vague as to an answer, and there's no real good explanation on that.
Yeah, if you've already visited irs.gov and it's not clear, if you wouldn't mind contacting one of our offices, keller.house.gov has our contact information there. We can try and get you a phone number, and you'll be able to try and link up on the phone with somebody at the IRS to give you guidance on how to handle that.
Thank you, Congressman Keller. I'm being told that we need to begin to wrap up this call due to time constraints, but I do have another question. This one's from Joe from Northumberland. He's wondering, where do you stand on giving more stimulus money to your constituents?
Well, the first thing I would say is, the CARES Act, and when we're giving this money out, it's actually going to be paid for by the taxpayers of the United States. So again, I'm not giving money out that isn't somebody else's. But in saying that, the CARES Act gave out $1,200 to individuals, or up to $1,200 for individuals. It was designed to get us through the pandemic. Now that we're able to reopen, we want to look at policies that get people back to work, because that is the best form of economic stimulus. For those individuals that can't find jobs, unemployment compensation has been increased through the pandemic, and of course, some of that payment is short term for that additional payment. But if you have any assistance on how any of those benefits work, certainly contact our office. And I also think it's the state has also done some additional things for as far as benefits for individuals that have kids for school lunches and unemployment. So, Senator, I don't know if there's a couple of things I think the state's also doing. So it's not just the federal government that's responding. Under the senator's leadership, the state has done some things to also be helpful.
Well, again, we're working with you in Washington to try to find the most appropriate way to keep our communities thriving during this problem, or at least surviving, maybe is a better word. As the Washington, we have the COVID-19 money, which is almost $4 billion, which we are going to appropriate. We immediately put $50 million towards our hospitals, state money. We are doing our best. We don't have the printing machine that they do in Washington. We have to balance our budgets, which is another challenge. We're going to probably put a budget together next year or next week, I should say. That's maybe a 5-month budget just to get us through this period of time. But you said it best, Congressman. The job is the best stimulus, and if we can get people back to work the way they were before this all started, I think people would be in much better shape.
Thank you very much, Senator. And should anyone on this call wish to get in contact with Congressman Keller's office, you may do so by going to the Congressman's website at keller.house.gov. You can follow the Congressman on social media, facebook.com/Congressman Fred Keller, or with the Twitter handle of Rep, R-E-P, Fred Keller. So again, at Rep Fred Keller. And to sign up for Congressman Keller's weekly e-newsletter, go to keller.house.gov/newsletter. And I'll now turn it over to the Congressman and the Senator for a few closing remarks. Senator Corman, we'll start with you first, sir.
Just, again, wanted to thank Congressman Keller for the opportunity to participate tonight. I also want to thank them for their leadership. This is a phrase I use quite often. You could spend $1 million a day, every day, from the day Jesus Christ was born to today, and not get to $1 trillion. So when you're talking trillions in Washington, D.C., people throw numbers around, that's a whole lot of money. And what the Speaker just passed in a partisan way was completely irresponsible. That would have had my grandchildren, if not my great-grandchildren, paying off. So I want to thank the Congressman. In times of emergency like this, the needs are high, so it's easy to just ruled that printing machine in Washington, D.C., and I want to thank them for having some sense of discipline, just as a taxpayer and as a parent, that getting us back to work and getting us to a point where we can determine our own future again is where we as Americans want to be, and not having just a government printing money for us to spend at their pleasure. So I want to thank the Congressman for his leadership down there. We will continue to work with the governor as best we possibly can, because that's what you should do in emergency, work together. But when there are differences, we'll point those out as well. But thank you again for the Congressman allowing me to participate in this phone call.
Congressman Keller, your closing remarks?
Again, I want to thank Senator Corman for joining us this afternoon. Also want to thank him for his outstanding leadership. Not only do the people of the Senator's District and of Pennsylvania 12 benefit from his leadership, but our entire Commonwealth does, because he certainly does formulate good public policy and make sure the Commonwealth is moving in the right direction. I would like to just thank everyone again for joining the call. If you did not get an answer to your question, please feel free to contact us. The information can be found on keller.house.gov. Also, I'll throw the senatorcorman.com. We work together very well, and we work for the people that we represent. So we thank you, wish you all very good health and a good rest of your evening. Thank you so much.